Welcome to Session 2 of Safe Travel Solutions. In Session 1, David talked to you about the importance of establishing a contingency covenant with your team. We hope you've taken the time to do this as a group. If not, look back through your listening guide at the sample covenant provided for you and take time to go over this as a team. In this session, David will be going over two very important concepts to the training. The idea of having a simple tenable statement, or STS, and the box. You will hear testimonies from people who've used these concepts, as well as see a video role play showing individuals putting this training into action. Refer to your listening guide for handouts, and remember to take notes as we go along.
Okay, welcome back. In this session, we're going to talk about this is a tricky concept for a lot of folks, particularly in the short-term mission environment. The idea of confidentiality on short-term mission trips. And I say it's tricky because initially in most classes, most audiences, I've got folks saying, we're going over as short-term mission team members or volunteers. How could we possibly have any secrets? You know, just answer the questions honestly. And that works fine in an environment where nobody's out to get you, or everybody's out to exploit you or cause an issue. It is a problem when we get into those environments. And so we're going to discuss the idea of confidentiality, and I want to first start off by trying to help you understand what we mean by confidentiality and what kind of things lead to problems. And then secondly, we need to talk about how a strategy for limiting those conversations, because it's not natural for some of us. I mean, if you've ever sat by the wrong person on an airplane, you know there's no bounds to some people's. I mean, you got the whole life story, and that's great if two strangers getting to know each other. That's bad if one of them had the intention of arresting the other one later, or is recording all that to press some false charges or something. So finally, then we want to get to, I mean, it's one thing a guy engages you in a nosy conversation, but the final issue is when there's a guy pointing a gun at me or threatening physical harm or permanent, jail, and he's saying if I don't answer, this is going to get worse. How do you say no to that? And not, besides, no, you can't make me, which, that would be the short survival course, okay? And they don't let us teach that one. There's not a lot that's easy. Everybody knows how to do that one. So we're going to talk about that really tough one where the guy gets right in the face and it's, you're going to tell me this or I'm going to hurt her. And suddenly, and that's about the worst thing I could do. A lot of guys, you say, you're going to tell me or I'll hurt you. That's, for many of us, that's easier to take than I'm going to hurt your team member. And so we want to talk about limiting those answers under pressure. Why are some things confidential? What kind of information could cause harm? Well, let me throw you out a few questions here, and you think about it, not from the terms of sitting in church talking to somebody, but let's take them into the environment where somebody who might be thinking later about ransom or wealth or money. So where do you live? America. Is that an issue? Sometimes. So what do you do for a living? Oh, a doctor. So you must make lots of money. No, I don't, not that much. I used to be a public school teacher, so I could honestly say, no, sir, I'm flat broke. You say, really? What do you make? I started paying $18,000 a year. Now take that to some other country. $18,000. And what if I just said to somebody who was thinking about, well, you can come up with 5 or 10 if you want to live. Okay. Oh, what do your parents do? Oh, dad's retired policeman. Okay. Suddenly in a whole different environment, if a guy who's thinking of me as a threat, oh, dad, mom, she's retired U.S. senator, we have a whole new frame of reference about my parents, about me, about income. And this idea of confidential, it's not a huge stretch. It's sitting in church or sitting in public. Somebody walks up to me in a restaurant and they ask me a nosy question. Somebody walked up to me and said, so how much did you make last year? When I got through laughing, none of your business, and if I'm in the wrong mood, none of your business, you old bat, But it's all different now when I've gone to this country to be nice and to try to have an effect on these people. Arrogance and short answers aren't going to work. Or worse, this guy's threatening to hurt me, and none of your business is probably not going to encourage him not to belt me. So what do I do with those types of things? Well, for one thing, I think it's important if we start to, as a group, before we go, think through what kind of information is confidential. And probably make a list, depending on the country I'm going on, whether or not we say we're there as missionaries, whether or not we say they're as short-term volunteers, short-term mission team members. In some countries, a closed country, that's not going to work. In some countries, I was traveling on a tourist visa or something like that. So I think I need to collect up a little information. A good source are the missionaries, the faith-based organization that I'm going to help. Hey, what kind of things would you rather we not mention? In some cases, those folks aren't saying that they're missionaries. They're there as business people, or they're there as humanitarian aid. I need to know what they're saying and kind of stick with that, so that I'm not causing that problem. And thinking of examples and things that are, I need to think about what would be provocative, what would increase my value to somebody financially for robbery, or financially for kidnapping, or politically. Some folks are kidnapped because of their perceived political value. I need to think about information that would make me more of a threat to somebody. A hostage taker who says, "What do you do for a living?" "Oh, I'm in between jobs. I just retired as a Green Beret," tends to put them on edge. Anything, I'm policeman, government, State Department, any connection with government, law enforcement, tends to make them feel more threatened, tends to make them think I'm maybe worth more. If I honestly answered, yeah, former Department of Defense worker, they would, that meant like really in real life down here, and to them, I must know Hillary Clinton or somebody. And I want to convey that I have any political importance at all. So those types of things can be confidential. How are you going to keep those quiet when the pressure comes on, though? And the pressure doesn't have to be a guy in your face with a gun or a fist. It is pressuring when a person, and particularly for Americans, when somebody sits down beside me and turns and nicely says, "So what do you do for a living?" Because I feel like a heel when I don't answer. "None of your business." Oh, or "Why are you asking?" That's awkward. So what we're going to suggest is this concept called an STS, a simple, tenable statement. We'd like everybody on the team kind of working together. Let's create a short description of what we're going to answer to who we are and why we're here visiting this country and what we're doing. Okay? STS is a State Department term they came up with, and even though it came out of the government, it makes sense. And so we're going to use it, and we've been training that for a long time. And I make that joke on myself because that's where I used to work. It's short. The first part, the simple part, means short. And if it's short, it's easy to remember. And I may need to remember this thing for a long period of time. I may need to be able to say it to this guy on the first day and 11 days later. Okay? It needs to be truthful, but it's basically truthful. And by that I mean it's not the whole story. Okay? Where were you born? Well, I was born in Oklahoma, and my father was an engineer, and the 400-word answer. Okay? Where are you from? The U.S. Okay? So it's going to be short. It's basically truthful. Why are you here in this country? Depending on the country, my team needs to kind of work that out. We're here as missionaries. We're here to bring aid to your people. We're here to teach literacy. We need to think through something that is not inflammatory. Well, we're here because you people are all messed up, and we're here to straighten you out. Okay? That's not going to do it. So I need to think through where I'm at. In some countries, I could just flat tell them, I came here with my church to help out, and that would be a completely non-inflammatory. In other countries, that would be perceived as, you came here, you oppose us, and now we're on opposite ends of the game. So I want to be innocent, and then the simple and the tenable, and then the final part is I've got to be consistent. Because if they tell me that if I answer that question the first time, and I answer it the second time, and then the third time the guy gets in my face and he scares me, and I change my answer a little bit, well, I used to teach elementary school. What happens when Billy changes his story? What do I know? There's more to the story. So I got to be consistent. So I should think it through ahead of time. I should think through what kind of questions might I be asked, whether this is in customs, it's a nosy person on an airplane. And whenever I feel a little awkward about saying too much, I'm just going to give them my STS. Okay? And the folks that you're going out there to work with, the hosting organization, they're going to know that term STS too, because we've been doing this training for quite a while, and they're going to want you to stick to that. And in fact, I get those comments a lot of time from long-term personnel. We wish short-termers would come with the idea that certain things are private. We wish they'd ask us ahead of time, what kind of things would you like us to not spread around? And then we wish they'd come with this idea of an STS.
You're about to hear from Randy Reynolds. Randy and his family were living in an Asian country when he was summoned by the government for interrogation. He talks about how he utilized the concept of the STS when questioned.
They asked me why I'd come to the country, and when they asked me that, I immediately said my STS. I came here to study the local language at your college, and they were writing everything down word for word, their questions and my responses. And then he said, yes, but why were you doing these illegal things? And I said, I came to your city to study the local language at your college. And he said, you just said that. And I said, you asked me the same question twice, and I gave you the same answer. And he leaned back in his chair, and he kind of gave me a little grin, and then he laughed out loud. And then he went on. He didn't ask me that question anymore. So the STS really worked for me in that particular circumstance.
Lisa Hughes had this training only 6 months prior to helping a short-term mission team that was detained in Russia. She talks about the importance of the STS when traveling overseas.
The number one thing would be the STS statement, and make sure that the whole team knows that even before they come to the field. Reinforce it once they get to the field, and reinforce it throughout the days and the weeks. And I was glad I'd had that training, because I kept coming back to that when the guards tried to ask me questions. And in different formats, they were asking that question.
So we need you to start thinking about putting that STS together. And I would, after as a team, we've kind of agreed on what we're saying, because I need to know what everybody else is saying. We shouldn't all say the exact same 4 words or so. We should maybe, you know, this guy says, well, I'm a school teacher and I came here to help your people and distribute food. And the other guy says, well, I'm a bricklayer and I came. You know, we all have our own versions. We don't want it to sound like we just memorized a lie or something. It is the truth. It needs to be simple, and it needs to be kind of a childlike, you know, logical. Childlike meaning not a lot of details. You know, I remember one experience teaching in a kindergarten class, and my candy bar disappeared off my desk. And I know where to go. Billy Bob, row 4. See my candy bar? Chocolate's running down right here. And the response is, what candy bar? Okay? That childlike, as opposed to an adult who would say, oh, you mean the chocolate here? Well, that has nothing to do with your missing Hershey bar. And an adult, we would want to fill in the details. And the kid is just, and so we need to kind of be that way. And whenever I feel pressured, I'm really going to go to that. If you start to scare me, you start to push me, I feel uncomfortable. Just a guy sitting next to me on the subway, and I'm thinking, is this a chance to witness and share who I am, and be, or is this guy just a little too nosy? And you can use this on telemarketers. They'll absolutely hate it, okay? And they won't call you back.
You've just heard David talk about the importance of having an STS when you travel. Stop and take a few minutes to craft your team's STS. Remember, STS stands for Simple Tenable Statement. Make it short and believable, and make sure that each member has an opportunity to write it down to help you memorize it. Of course, you should not take your written STS on your trip with you. It should go along in your head. Also, remember that it's extremely important for you to coordinate your STS with the workers in the country. They are also a part of your team and can tell you the best way to construct your STS for the specific country you're visiting. When you finish discussing your STS, resume the DVD for the rest of Session 2.